Welcome back to Beyond Words, where every act of kindness has the power to change lives, including our own. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. A tiny, fragile baby lies in a neonatal intensive care unit, fighting for his life. His parents, overwhelmed by medical bills and fear, have stopped visiting. To most people, he might seem like just another statistic, a premature infant with little chance of survival. But not to Rachel. Rachel was more than just a nurse. She was a beacon of hope in the chaos of the hospital. Day after day, she cared for babies like Ethan, pouring her heart into each life she touched. When Ethan's future hung by a thread, Rachel made a decision that would alter both their destinies forever. What she didn't know at the time was that this small, fragile boy would grow up to transform her life in ways she could never have imagined. Rachel had always known that being a nurse wasn't just a job. It was a calling. For over a decade, she dedicated her life to caring for others, often at the expense of her own well-being. At 36, she worked grueling 12-hour shifts at St. Mary's Hospital, an underfunded facility in the heart of the city. Her days were filled with endless responsibilities, monitoring patients, comforting grieving families, and ensuring the tiniest lives in the neonatal intensive care unit NICU had a fighting chance. But nothing could have prepared her for Ethan. He arrived one cold November night, weighing less than 3 pounds. Born nearly 4 months premature, his tiny body struggled to breathe on its own. His parents, barely out of their teens, sat by his incubator in silence during those first few weeks, their faces etched with worry. They visited as often as they could, but as the medical bills piled up, their visits became fewer and farther between. Eventually, they stopped coming altogether. Rachel noticed the change immediately. The once familiar faces were replaced by empty chairs beside Ethan's incubator. She tried reaching out, calling the number they'd left on file, sending letters, but received no response. It broke her heart. These situations weren't uncommon in the NICU, where financial strain and emotional exhaustion often overwhelmed young parents. But that didn't make it any easier to watch. Ethan, however, fought like a warrior. Despite his fragile state, he clung to life with a tenacity that amazed everyone around him. Rachel found herself drawn to him more and more, spending extra time adjusting his oxygen levels, gently stroking his tiny hand through the incubator's porthole, and whispering words of encouragement. "You're stronger than you think, little guy," she murmured one evening, her voice soft but steady. "You've got this." To Rachel, Ethan wasn't just another patient. He was a reminder of why she'd chosen this path, to give every life a fighting chance, no matter how small or fragile. But as the weeks turned into months, the hospital administration grew impatient. Without payment or parental involvement, Ethan's future at St. Mary's became uncertain. A meeting was called to discuss transferring him to foster care, a decision that would likely separate him from the only consistent caregiver he'd ever known, Rachel. As she listened to the discussion, Rachel felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Foster care wasn't inherently bad, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan deserved better. He needed stability, love, and someone who truly believed in him. And deep down, she knew she was the only person willing to step up. That night, as she sat alone in the dimly lit NICU, watching Ethan's chest rise and fall with each labored breath, Rachel made a silent promise. "I'm not giving up on you," she whispered, "no matter what it takes." Rachel's decision didn't come easily. In fact, it felt like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there was water below to break her fall. She spent countless sleepless nights weighing the pros and cons, staring at the cracked ceiling of her modest one-bedroom apartment, while Ethan's tiny face lingered in her mind. Could she really do this? Did she have what it took to raise a medically fragile child on her own? The financial burden alone seemed insurmountable. Rachel already lived paycheck to paycheck, stretching every dollar to cover rent, groceries, and student loan payments from her nursing degree. Adding Ethan to the mix meant taking on medical bills that would make even the wealthiest families cringe. Yet, despite the looming challenges, something inside her refused to let go. "I can figure this out," she told herself one morning, gripping her coffee mug tightly as tears welled up in her eyes. I have to. Her first step was practical, finding ways to cover Ethan's immediate expenses. She picked up extra shifts at the hospital, working back-to-back double shifts whenever possible. Her body ached constantly, and dark circles formed under her eyes, but she pushed through. On weekends, she sold items she no longer needed, her car, furniture, even her grandmother's vintage jewelry. Each sale brought a mix of sadness and relief. Letting go of cherished possessions hurt, but knowing it was for Ethan made it bearable. Word of Rachel's efforts spread among her coworkers, who rallied around her with donations and support. One nurse organized a fundraiser, raising enough money to cover Ethan's next round of treatments. Another gifted Rachel a stroller and baby clothes her own children had outgrown. These acts of kindness reminded Rachel that she wasn't entirely alone, but they also underscored the enormity of what she was undertaking. Not everyone understood her choice. You're risking everything for a kid who isn't even yours, her best friend, Lisa, said during one heated conversation over dinner. What happens when things get tough? When he needs surgeries or therapies you can't afford? Rachel looked down at her plate, pushing a piece of broccoli around with her fork. Lisa's words stung because they echoed her own fears. But deep down, she knew the answer. I'm not doing this because it's easy, Rachel replied firmly. I'm doing it because it's right. Ethan deserves a chance, Lisa. Every life does. Lisa sighed, shaking her head. You're going to burn yourself out. Maybe, Rachel admitted softly. But I'd rather burn out trying than live with regret. With renewed determination, Rachel began the legal process of adopting Ethan. It was a long and complicated journey, filled with paperwork, court hearings, and meetings with social workers. At times, it felt like the system itself was working against her. A single, financially unstable woman attempting to take responsibility for a high-needs child. But Rachel refused to give up. Finally, after nearly a year of relentless effort, the day came when Ethan officially became hers. Standing in the courtroom, holding his tiny hand in hers, Rachel felt a surge of emotions she couldn't quite put into words. Fear, joy, pride, exhaustion. They all collided in a whirlwind of tears and laughter. You're my son now, she whispered, kissing the top of his head. And we're gonna get through this together, okay? No matter what. Ethan gurgled happily, completely unaware of the monumental moment unfolding around him. To him, Rachel was simply mommy. The person who held him when he cried, sang lullabies to soothe him, and loved him unconditionally. For Rachel, though, it was more than just a title. It was a promise, a vow to protect, nurture, and fight for this little boy who had stolen her heart. As they left the courthouse that afternoon, Rachel glanced down at Ethan, bundled snugly in his blanket. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. Together, they could face anything. The early years with Ethan were a whirlwind of challenges and triumphs, each day bringing new obstacles that tested Rachel's strength and resolve. From the moment they left the courthouse, Rachel knew their journey wouldn't be easy, but she also knew it would be worth every sacrifice. Ethan's medical needs remained significant even after leaving the NICU. He required regular checkups, physical therapy to strengthen his underdeveloped muscles, and specialized care for chronic respiratory issues stemming from his premature birth. The hospital bills continued to pile up, forcing Rachel to maintain her grueling schedule of extra shifts while juggling Ethan's appointments. But despite the exhaustion, there were moments of pure joy that made everything worthwhile, like the first time Ethan smiled, a gummy, toothless grin that lit up his entire face, or the day he rolled over for the first time, giggling as if he just discovered the secret to life. Those milestones, no matter how small, reminded Rachel why she had chosen this path. One particularly difficult winter, when Ethan was 2, he contracted pneumonia. For weeks, Rachel barely slept, sitting by his bedside in the hospital, holding his hand and praying silently. The doctors warned her that his fragile immune system might not pull through, but Ethan proved them wrong once again. Slowly, he began to recover, his tiny body fighting harder than anyone expected. When they finally returned home, Rachel collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't sure whether she was crying from relief or sheer exhaustion, or maybe both. But as Ethan nestled into her arms, cooing softly, she realized something profound. They were survivors. Together, they could overcome anything. As Ethan grew older, Rachel poured all her energy into giving him as normal a childhood as possible. They lived modestly, renting a small apartment, shopping at thrift stores, and relying heavily on community support. But their home was always filled with love. Rachel read bedtime stories to Ethan every night, taught him shapes and colors using flashcards, and cheered wildly during his preschool graduation ceremony. By the time Ethan started elementary school, it was clear he was an exceptionally bright child. His teachers marveled at his curiosity and problem-solving skills, often commenting on how quickly he grasped complex concepts. By third grade, Ethan had developed a fascination with technology. He loved taking apart old electronics to see how they worked, much to Rachel's amusement, and occasional frustration when pieces went missing. "I think we're raising a little engineer," Rachel joked one evening, watching Ethan tinker with a broken radio on the kitchen table. "Or a scientist," Ethan replied excitedly, holding up a circuit board triumphantly. "Look, Mommy, I fixed it." Rachel laughed, ruffling his hair. "You sure did, kiddo. Keep going, you're amazing." Encouraged by his passion, Rachel saved up to buy Ethan a second-hand laptop when he turned 10. It was a stretch financially, but seeing the spark in his eyes made it worth every penny. Within days, Ethan had taught himself basic coding through free online tutorials. By the end of the summer, he had created his first simple game, a pixelated character jumping over obstacles. "He's going to change the world someday," Rachel whispered to herself one night, watching Ethan hunched over the laptop, completely absorbed in his work. But it wasn't just Ethan's brilliance that stood out. It was his kindness. Despite growing up in challenging circumstances, he never lost sight of empathy. At school, he befriended classmates who were bullied, shared his lunch with those who forgot theirs, and volunteered to help teachers clean up after class. "Where does he get this from?" one teacher asked Rachel during a parent-teacher conference. Rachel smiled proudly. "From experience, I guess. He knows what it feels like to need someone to believe in you." As Ethan entered his teenage years, the challenges shifted. Puberty brought hormonal changes that exacerbated his respiratory issues, requiring frequent trips to the doctor. School projects became more demanding, and social pressures loomed large. But through it all, Rachel remained Ethan's rock, cheering him on and reminding him of his worth. "You're capable of incredible things, Ethan," she told him one evening after a tough day. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Her words stuck with him, fueling his determination to succeed, not just for himself, but for her. By high school, Ethan's coding skills had evolved into something extraordinary. He developed apps to solve real-world problems, like a program that helped track medication schedules for elderly patients, or another that connected low-income families with affordable healthcare resources. His projects earned recognition at science fairs and caught the attention of local tech companies. But success didn't come without setbacks. When Ethan pitched his ideas to investors during a startup competition, many dismissed him because of his humble background. "You're just a kid," one investor scoffed. "What do you know about running a business?" Ethan came home devastated, questioning whether he was good enough. But Rachel refused to let him give up. "They don't see your potential yet, sweetheart," she said firmly, wrapping an arm around him. "But I do, and so do you. Keep pushing forward. This is just the beginning." Taking her advice to heart, Ethan refined his pitches, sought mentorship from teachers, and kept improving his prototypes. Finally, during his senior year, he presented a revolutionary app designed to streamline access to affordable healthcare, a tool inspired by his own experiences growing up uninsured. This time, the response was different. Investors listened intently, captivated by Ethan's vision and authenticity. Within weeks, his demo video went viral online, garnering millions of views and sparking global interest. Offers poured in from venture capitalists eager to fund his project. When Ethan called Rachel to share the news, her voice cracked with emotion. "We did it, Mom," he said, choking back tears. "We actually did it." Rachel hugged him tightly, overwhelmed with pride. "No, sweetheart," she corrected gently. "You did it. You've always had this inside you. I just gave you the space to shine." Ethan's viral demo video marked a turning point, not just for him but for Rachel as well. Overnight, the shy teenager who had grown up in a modest apartment became the face of innovation and resilience. News outlets clamored to interview him. Tech blogs hailed him as a prodigy, and social media buzzed with praise for his groundbreaking app. But amidst the whirlwind of attention, Ethan remained grounded, always crediting Rachel for his success. "This app wouldn't exist without my mom," he told a reporter during one televised interview. "She taught me that no matter how hard things get, you can still make a difference if you care enough to try." Rachel watched the interview from their tiny living room, tears streaming down her face. She had spent years sacrificing everything for Ethan, never expecting anything in return. Yet here he was, standing tall and confident, using his platform to honor her sacrifices. The breakthrough came when a major Silicon Valley investor reached out, offering to fund Ethan's project with a multimillion-dollar investment. The deal included resources to scale the app globally, ensuring it could reach underserved communities worldwide. For Ethan, this wasn't just about business, it was personal. He envisioned a world where no family would have to choose between food and medicine, where healthcare access wasn't determined by income or privilege. "Mom, we're really doing this," Ethan said one evening, showing Rachel the signed contract. His hands trembled slightly as he held it out to her, his eyes wide with disbelief and excitement. Rachel took the document, scanning it quickly before pulling him into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You've worked so hard for this." With funding secured, Ethan dove headfirst into building his company. He assembled a team of passionate developers, many of whom shared his vision of equitable healthcare access. Together, they refined the app, adding features like multilingual support, real-time medical consultations, and partnerships with nonprofit organizations. Within months, the app launched globally, earning rave reviews from users and critics alike. The impact was immediate and profound. Families struggling to afford medical care found relief through the app's affordable solutions. Rural communities gained access to telehealth services they'd never had before. Even hospitals began adopting the platform to streamline patient care. As the app gained traction, so did Ethan's reputation. Invitations poured in for speaking engagements at conferences, universities, and global summits. Each time he stepped onto a stage, Ethan made sure to highlight the woman who had believed in him when no one else did. "My mom is my hero," he declared during a TED Talk that brought the audience to tears. "She showed me that love isn't just about giving. It's about believing in someone even when the odds are stacked against them." By the time Ethan graduated high school, his company was valued at over $50 million. Offers rolled in from top universities and tech giants eager to recruit him, but Ethan chose to stay focused on his mission. He deferred college to continue growing the business, promising Rachel he'd return to his studies once things stabilized. Through it all, Rachel stood by his side, offering guidance and encouragement whenever needed. Though she often felt overshadowed by Ethan's meteoric rise, she reminded herself that this wasn't about her. It was about the lives they were changing together. One day, while sorting through paperwork at home, Rachel stumbled upon an old photo of Ethan as a baby, lying fragile and tiny in his incubator. She smiled softly, tracing the edges of the picture with her fingers. "You've come so far, little guy," she murmured, shaking her head in awe. "I knew you were special from the start." Little did she know, Ethan was planning something extraordinary, something that would change her life forever. The moment Rachel realized Ethan had something planned for her came during a charity gala hosted by his company. The event was held in a grand ballroom, adorned with sparkling chandeliers and elegant floral arrangements. Guests included tech moguls, philanthropists, and media personalities, all gathered to celebrate Ethan's achievements and the global impact of his app. Rachel had reluctantly agreed to attend, wearing a simple yet elegant dress Ethan had insisted on buying for her. As she walked into the room, she felt out of place among the glitz and glamour. But Ethan beamed with pride as he introduced her to everyone they met. "This is my mom," he said repeatedly, his voice filled with admiration. She's the reason I'm here today. Later that evening, Ethan took the stage to deliver a speech. The room fell silent as he began speaking about his journey. From his premature birth and struggles in the NICU to the challenges of growing up without financial security. He spoke candidly about Rachel's sacrifices, her unwavering belief in him, and the countless nights she stayed awake worrying about their future. And now, Ethan continued, his voice trembling with emotion. I want to thank her in the best way I know how. He gestured toward the back of the room, where a large screen displayed a slideshow of photos. Rachel holding baby Ethan in the hospital, teaching him to read, cheering at his school events, and supporting him through every milestone. The final image showed a rendering of a beautiful house surrounded by trees and flowers. Mom, you've given me everything, Ethan said, turning to face her. Now it's my turn to give back. This is for you. A home where you can rest, relax, and never worry again. Rachel gasped, tears streaming down her face as the audience erupted into applause. She stood frozen, unable to process what was happening until Ethan stepped off the stage and hugged her tightly. I love you, Mom, he whispered. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. In addition to the house, Ethan announced the creation of a foundation in Rachel's name, dedicated to helping struggling families afford medical care for premature babies. That night, as they drove home together, Rachel looked at Ethan with a mix of awe and gratitude. You've already given me more than I ever dreamed of, she said softly. But thank you for making our dreams come true. Rachel's new home became more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of unconditional love. Nestled in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by lush greenery, the house was everything Rachel had ever dreamed of, but never allowed herself to desire. Yet, true to her nature, she didn't keep it all to herself. Within months, Rachel transformed one of the spare rooms into a mentoring space for nurses and single parents struggling to balance work and family life. She hosted workshops, sharing her story and offering guidance to others facing similar challenges. Her message was simple yet profound. No matter how hard things get, never underestimate the impact of kindness and perseverance. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to expand his company's reach, partnering with global organizations to bring affordable healthcare solutions to underserved communities. Together, mother and son traveled the world, speaking at conferences and meeting families whose lives had been transformed by their efforts. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of their new home, Rachel turned to Ethan with a soft smile. Do you remember those nights in the NICU? She asked, her voice tinged with nostalgia. Ethan nodded, grinning. How could I forget? You told me I was stronger than I thought. Well, Rachel said, wrapping an arm around him, you proved me right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Rachel reflected on their journey. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, it had all led them here. Together, they had turned pain into purpose and struggle into success. And in that moment, Rachel knew their story wasn't just about survival. It was about thriving against all odds. Rachel often found herself sitting on the porch of their new home, watching the sunset and marveling at how far they'd come. From those sleepless nights in the NICU to Ethan's rise as a global innovator, their journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. But what touched her most was the ripple effect of their story. Through the foundation in her name, Rachel helped countless families access medical care for premature babies, ensuring no child would ever feel forgotten again. And through his company, Ethan continued to break barriers, proving that compassion and technology could go hand in hand. As Beyond Words reminds us, acts of kindness, no matter how small, have the power to transform lives, including our own. Rachel and Ethan's story is a testament to the fact that love, resilience, and belief can overcome even the greatest challenges. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Beyond Words for more tales that celebrate the beauty of humanity. Until next time, remember, every act of kindness plants a seed, and with enough care, it can grow into something truly remarkable.